Aloha mai kako. Mahalo, mahalo. Welcome everyone to Lahainaluna School. Go Lunas. My name is Mehana Hines, and I will serve as your MC for today. I get the honor and privilege of bringing these intelligent, compassionate, and well-informed people here today to offer up information to all of you to help you with one of the big pieces in all the work that's being done for Lahaina, and that's debris removal. So today, we're gonna, just to kind of map out the day, we're gonna hear from each of the speakers. Each of them are gonna provide information pertinent to, and this is up-to-date information. Slides were changed as of 5 minutes ago to bring you the most robust information that can be provided today. After the speakers go, there will be a a short break, and then a question and answer phase where you guys will get to ask your specific questions. And we also have people here to help you either get updates on your ROEs and or facilitate the process if you have not yet done your ROEs. My kai, it's good? You can hold more? Right on, mahalo. So today we have speakers both from the County of Maui, from the Army Corps of Engineers, and one of your very own Maui archaeologists, Tanya Lee Gregg here to discuss those very important aspects of this process. So the first person I'm going to ask to come up and speak with all of you today from the County Planning Office, Erin Wade.
Thank you, Mehana. Thank you. So glad to be able to be here. I've met and seen many of you at the community meetings, and I'm just grateful you took the time today to come kind of do a deep dive with us about debris cleanup. So just to walk you through high level, and please make yourself comfortable, move the chairs, be wherever you feel comfortable. I'm not sure, did you say where the restrooms were? Okay, so for the folks that came in, this is Kane, that's Wahine on this side if you need. Okay. So the county, right after the fire, was contacted after the governor released the emergency proclamation and said, the County of Maui needs help. Can you please send help, basically? And then at that time, what we learned was real quickly that in other wildfire situations, FEMA comes to assist, and they often task the Army Corps of Engineers to help do cleanup where there has been a wildfire incident. So this is kind of the path and process for wildfire cleanup. And all of this is on the Maui Recovers website as well if you're interested in checking it out on the web. Essentially, phase one is hazardous material removal. The EPA was tasked with doing that by FEMA. That has occurred throughout Kula and Lahaina to date. Then reentry was allowed to occur. And now we're at the enrollment stage and cleanup stage. The Army Corps has been tasked with participating and helping with the cleanup. Okay, so in order to utilize the Army Corps of Engineers to do the cleanup for you on your behalf at your property, we do need you to enroll. We essentially need permission for the government to access the property to perform the cleanup work. So that is one option, and that's the upper path that you see here. The bottom path is the alternative debris removal path. That's if you do not choose to allow the cleanup to occur. So what I did, and you'll find this on your tables as well, there's a worksheet here that talks about evaluating your options, pros and cons. I will allow you to kind of absorb that as you're thinking about your decision, or to share it with friends and neighbors if they haven't made their decision. The important thing I think to know is cost. And we learned a whole lot in Kula about what the cost is of actually doing this kind of cleanup. So in other incidences, we had heard from the Corps that it was costing over $100,000 a property for them to do the cleanup. In Kula, it was upwards of $250,000 a property for cleanup. So just please, be knowledgeable about all of the things that are required for cleanup, because whether it's this team that does it or whether you try to use your own contractors, either way, there's soil testing, hazard tree removal, erosion control, archaeology, all kinds of things that have to take place. So just be cognizant of all of the elements that have to take place. And we can do lots of Q&A at the end about that if you want. Okay. If you do choose to sign up and haven't already, or if you would like to assist someone else in doing the sign up, we recommend you start by going to the Maui Recovers website. This is it. You'll see this little emblem, which is the State of Hawaii Emergency Management. They're partnering with us to run the Right of Entry program. You'll click on that. It will take you to this page, which shares information about debris removal. And it also has this map you can see at the bottom. Did it click? Yes. This is zoomed in to 505 Front Street right now. What this shows, for your information, everything in blue, those folks have started a right of entry application. If it doesn't have blue, that means they have not started it. Now, the blue doesn't mean it's complete. So just, heads up, we're gonna walk through what it takes to fill out the right of entry application, but there are a series of documents you need to provide to just confirm you indeed are the owner, that you have insurance, or if you don't have insurance, that's actually okay. But if you don't, we just need to know that. Some other things. So what the map shows for your awareness is who has started the application, who hasn't, and if it has a red star, that means it was deferred by the EPA, meaning there was something too unsafe about the property for the EPA to do the hazardous material cleanup. So that is still yet to be done. So for those people in particular, we do need right of entry access to make sure they can go in and even just get the hazardous material cleaned up. Okay. So then, below the map, you'll see these two boxes to fill out your right of entry. Either start a new application or you already have an account. It'll take you right to the portal to start filling out information about your right of entry. This is what the portal looks like. If this is your first time signing up, it's gonna do a two-factor authentication just to make sure, because there's personal information you're sharing with this. So we do have the two-factor authentication. And then this was just mine that I created. This is sort of what the platform looks like. And informing and acknowledging that you're going to be sharing personal data and that we will be sharing it between the Army Corps of Engineers, ourselves, and the state of Hawaii, essentially, and that's it. And then we get to the items that are needed for documentation. So property information, that's what is your address, what is your TMK number. If you don't know your TMK number, it is on the real property tax bill. If you don't have that, the team back here, so Christine and Ann, can you guys raise your hand so folks know who you are at Tidal Basin? Christine and Annette, there they are, okay. So that's the Tidal Basin team that's assisting with intake. They can also help you look up your TMK number if you need. Your insurance information, we request the declaration page. It helps us to understand debris removal. If you have a line item in your insurance related to debris removal, later, long after the cleanup is done, we will be asking you for that amount. So most folks will have a total insurance policy, and then they'll have a line that says 10,000 for debris removal or some amount, okay? If you have something specified for that, meaning you wouldn't otherwise get it. So if you didn't do debris removal, that money's not coming out of your insurance policy anyway. That is eligible to be remitted back as payment for the cleanup. But only that, no other amount of your insurance. So the rest of your insurance for rebuild all remains for you and your utilization. And then finally, signatures to verify that you are indeed the owner. If you do it online, there's just an authentication process that they do over the phone. If you prefer to do it in person, there are 3 locations to do this. One is at Kako'o Maui CNHA, that's at the Maui Mall, kind of one door over from Subway. The disaster recovery here at the Civic Center, or at the Kalana Maui building, the county building on the ground floor lobby. We're also doing intake in those locations. The times and hours of availability are on the website. So that's my intro, and I'll turn it over to Colonel Curry to share what the Army Corps' role is specifically.
Okay, well, thank you, Aaron, and aloha. Again, I'm Colonel Jess Curry. Just as Aaron said, I recognize a lot of faces in the room from the public meetings we've been doing on Wednesday nights. So, I certainly appreciate you taking the time to come up here today to continue that conversation and continue giving us an opportunity to answer your questions and address your concerns with this program, ultimately to help you make the best decision possible. We have a really amazing team here with us. I mean, obviously, Dr. Koger here up on stage with me, but also spread throughout the room. Pretty easy to spot with the Army Corps, either red or white shirts on. And they are absolutely here to help you with this process. We certainly don't want anyone, moving forward through this process with doubts or with questions unanswered. So we're looking for every opportunity to answer your questions, to help you understand, again, what the process is and what our part is in that, and how we're gonna work with you throughout the cleaning of your property, should you choose to submit a right of entry. So we have done that in a number of ways over the last couple of months. We also have our call center, but again, as we have already begun and started to be able to demonstrate what this program looks like up in Kula, or I would say more than started. I mean, essentially, we are complete in Kula. I think that we have one final step that we're doing up there now, but all properties have been cleaned in Kula. And we definitely want to demonstrate that or show that to all those here in Lahaina, so you can see an example of what this looks like and what our process is. Lahaina is very different than Kula, clearly. The process has many parts of that process that are the same, but so we can show you how we're gonna do it by, again, demonstrating or showing pictures for what we did in Kula, or also connecting you with members of that community that can tell you from personal experience what it was like working with the Corps and our contractors throughout this process. No, we are certainly not perfect. But we do give you our continual commitment that we are part of this with you. And as we start properties, as we start individually engaging with those that have submitted a right of entry, that is a commitment that we will continue until the job is done. And we'll communicate with you. We'll ensure that your voice is heard and that your concerns are addressed, not only from the day you sign the right of entry and submit that to the county, but every single step along the way, to ensure that although our teams are there doing the cleanup, you are also part of that process and have a voice, again, until it is done, and we can give that right of entry back to the county, and that can all come back to you, and you can start to the next steps of rebuilding your homes or your businesses and what you have planned to continue in this recovery. And one of the key steps that I'll touch on, really for Lahaina, and one of the areas that has made it different than Kula, is the need to have a temporary storage site. Many of you are very aware of the temporary debris storage site that has been under construction in Olowalu for the last several weeks. It will be ready to receive material in the next few days. With the county council's review of the temporary debris storage site in Olowalu yesterday, a very long, emotional, and important process that the county needed to go through. but ultimately did approve our right of entry to continue operations there in Olowalu and open the door for this debris removal to start. Without that, we would not be able to start in Lahaina. So we anticipate really this coming week, we will begin on the first properties here in Lahaina. These are all residential properties, but the process will begin. We intend to start on a smaller scale on really approximately about 5 properties initially, and then to expand responsibly in order to get to the point where we can have as many crews working at once, working on as many properties at once as is possible, given all the other factors that are here that we have to pay close attention to. The first one, which you'll hear more about later, is the reality that this is a sacred area. This is a sacred town, and the cultural resources that are here, the history, the ancestry, all that is at the beginning of what we are committed to honoring as we do this work. So that is extremely important to you. So therefore, it's extremely important to us. And as we work through this process, that will again remain at the forefront for what we're working through, and will be part of how quickly we're able to do this work. Secondly, care for the environment. We have to do this work correctly. We have to do it the right way. The techniques that we used, which again you'll hear more specifically about here in a few minutes, they were very successful in Kula. And we recognize again, this is not Kula, this is Lahaina, but those techniques are things that we've been working to continue to refine. I am very confident, based on the performance of our contractor and the constant oversight of our cultural monitors and our quality assurance personnel from the Corps, that they are going to impress you with how they do this job and how they take the care to protect your cultural or your sacred areas, but also protect the environment while they do this work. That's another part of it that will make this process not necessarily as fast as it would be if none of that existed, but it does. And again, we are committed to ensuring that we do that. Another piece that we have to always take into account is the community that is in and around Lahaina still. Care for the health and safety of those that live nearby, the schools, the other areas where, again, we have to make sure that we are doing this the right way to protect them as we do this work. Again, I'm very confident in the process that we have and the contractors that we have doing this work, that they are going to be able to do that in a way that once you see it start, your confidence will build in our commitment to all these things and ability to do this. The last thing that is, again, it's the reality that will limit how quickly we can do this work. It's simply just the process of getting this material out. Even thankfully, we have a short drive to get it out of Lahaina, and really only one crossing over the Pali to get it to the temporary debris storage site in Olowalu. But that traffic, that impact is still going to be significant. And we recognize that we can't just flood every highway with thousands of trucks all at once. And our crews out there have to maintain awareness of a community that still is here and still is operating and moving through their lives in a way that we need to coexist with. So that's really probably the other thing that I would mention, that as we work through this plan and we get it started, again, we're going to be paying very close attention to the community and your feedback throughout that process. All of this very, very close coordination with Maui County and their respective offices that are just as committed to doing this the right way, to ensure that, again, as this process moves forward, we'll do it the right way. We'll do it as quickly as possible and as safely as possible, so that, again, when we get to each property, again, those homeowners, those business owners are gonna have confidence, and they'll maintain, hopefully, the trust that we will continue to work to earn throughout this process. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you. Obviously, when we get to question and answer, I would say nothing is off the table. If you've got questions, please ask them, because we want to make sure that we address those, because that trust that is so important as we get started here, it's built on our transparency and honesty. We have absolutely nothing to hide from this community. We want to honor you by being completely transparent in everything that we're doing. So with that, I'm going to pass off to Dr. Koger, who is going to take you through some of the specific details. And again, thanks for being here.
Good afternoon and aloha. Oh, it didn't work. There we go. The purpose for this workshop is to discuss the rights of entry. That will start the phase 2 process. We cannot enter your property and do any work under the phase 2 program without you signing a right of entry. It's important to know that right of entry is for your property. You and you alone understand it better than anybody else. We're not going to, in any way, shape, or form, attempt to understand what your property is. However, part of the right of entry process is a map of your property. If you could fill that out and pay attention to the detail that you put in there, we would appreciate that. So hazards that you know are on the site, septic tanks and things like that, things that you would like preserved, please include that. This is your property and we are working for you. That being said, once a right of entry is received, intrusive work, debris removal will not occur until after an archaeological assessment is conducted. And Tanya will explain more about what that is after my talk. So after the archaeological assessment, we will come and actually we'll give you a call at least 3 days in advance to schedule the work on your property. You are allowed to view from a safe distance while we do work on your property. The first thing we'll do is remove metal, and that will be taken to a recycler after it's rinsed on the site. Then we'll remove any recyclable concrete, also recycled. So we're trying to minimize anything that might have to be disposed of. After that, the ash and debris that is the reason why we have an emergency that might contain some hazardous or toxic chemicals is wetted, placed in a plastic-lined truck, and wrapped. And I have some slides to show you this process, but I just want to go through the whole thing first. After that debris is removed, we'll remove 6 inches of soil from around the foundation, and then we'll pull the foundation. Okay, so the foundations will be removed. There's no way to rebuild on these foundations. They have been compromised by the fire. Finally, we will go in and sample. And what we're sampling for is to get you back to a permit. You need to meet the residential standard criteria that's set by the Department of Health, and that's what we're doing. We're cleaning up this catastrophic event so that you can build again, you can go home. So with that, I'll take you through a couple of slides. As was discussed, phase 1 has been complete. Phase 2 is the active debris removal. And then after active debris removal, we'll provide a clearance document, a closeout document that allows the county to start talking to you about insurance and rebuilding and permitting. So what we're trying to do is to go from an uncontained, uncontrolled environment and get to a clean environment and contain this debris in a temporary debris storage area until a permanent facility is built by Maui County. This is an example property up in Kula. So this was pre-debris removal. Okay, if you've done re-entry on your property, you're very familiar with what's out there. And post-debris removal, you have a clean start. You may have some questions about where the debris is going. You may have heard things. And what I can tell you is that we have built the most robust temporary debris storage site ever. FEMA has provided the funding, and we are complying with all laws and regulations to make sure that this is safe. So what we have from top to bottom, the trucks will enter the site. They're not driving on the membrane that protects the soil and groundwater below. There's an operations layer that's 2 feet thick. That's clean imported soil. On top, or just below that is a geotextile membrane, and then below that is an 80 mil liner. It's a really thick plastic liner. There's another geotextile membrane, and then finally a prepared subgrade, which is crushed cinder that is compacted, so it has low permeability. So this is just an example. This is the geotextile membrane that's over that plastic liner, and they're placing the operations layer on top. So that's what the trucks drive on. This is what the temporary debris site looks like currently. So as Colonel Curry said, we're in the next couple of days, this is ready to accept debris. And so for protection of the public, as the material is transported, as we said, that ash and debris is wetted and placed in plastic lined trucks. That plastic is wrapped and sealed, and that plastic wrap is placed at the temporary debris site. Every day, that will be covered so that no ash and debris can get out. And then finally, most, if not all of this information can be found on MauriRecovers.org. But we really would like to turn this into a workshop that's for you. We have folks that can answer any questions about the phase 2 debris removal. Tidal Basin's here, or Aaron's here to talk about the right of entry process. And we just hope to make this as informative as we can. So please meet with us and ask us any questions you'd like. Thank you. Oh, sorry. I'd like to turn it over to Tanya to discuss the archaeological and cultural.
Aloha. So we are all very, very aware of the multicultural significance of Lahaina and the continuous generational residency of this area. Yeah. And so we understand that this is sort of the height of cultural sensitivity. And the Corps understands that too, as well as FEMA and Maui County. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the process that governs the archaeological aspects of this, as well as the cultural observations that are occurring side by side. Right? So the main umbrella that all of our work falls under is called the National Historic Preservation Act. And it's a legislative act that created permanent institutions to define a process for historic preservation in the U.S. And what that means is that to protect the national heritage of the country, that trickles down to us at our local level and the multi-ethnic Native Hawaiian cultural heritage as well. So in order for that act to be triggered and the processes that come with that act, there are three things or three potential triggers that create a federal undertaking, and that sets the National Historic Preservation Act in process. So one, does it require a federal permit? If you are a boater and maybe you have a slip at the harbor and you have to improve anything, you may require an Army Corps permit, right? And so if that is required, that is considered a federal undertaking, and the National Historic Preservation Act in Section 106 kicks in. If there is federal funding involved, so a lot of our state highways also get funding from Federal Highways Administration. A project like that, like the realignment of Honopi'ilani Highway,
that is considered a federal undertaking, and that process comes into play. This process that we are in comes into play. And then the other is it a federal project? So is it on federal lands? Is it being undertaken by specifically and directly the federal agency? And all of these three things, any one of these would trigger the National Historic Preservation Act and this process that we're in right now. So what does that do? It requires compliance with Section 106, and again, that's that process. Oh, that's really dark. You guys can see. That's really dark. Okay, so I'll read it then. So compliance with Section 106, identification and documentation of historic properties. So that is the archaeological sites and features. That is the historic architectural features. So in Lahaina town, like the really old boundary walls, the WPA walls that say 1940 on it, Lahainaluna High School, certain different aspects to that, as well as the historic district along Front Street and behind now. So all of these areas that give Lahaina town its unique characteristics and its historic presence, that all needs to be documented as a part of this process. The other aspect to this is consultation with Native Hawaiian organizations, as well as anyone who may be affected and have a cultural connection to these areas. What this helps us with is to understand maybe not necessarily what we are seeing on the ground, but what might be below the ground with regard to debris removal, and what may be in our vicinity that maybe is not physically present. All of this to comply with the Section 106 process, and to try and avoid harm to these types of sites, or if it's absolutely necessary in this situation, we may be in a situation where there is contamination or a structure, a historic boundary wall, the boundary walls that maybe form the limits of a property has been compromised by the fire. Yeah. And if that's the case, then we try to look at ways to minimize that effect or minimize any damage as a result of having to remove certain sections of those walls or structures. Yeah. In Kula, we also made sure to confer with the property owner, let them know this is a terrace that we documented. We understand that it's historic and it's important to you. However, it's been compromised by the fire and we would need to remove a certain portion of this terrace. Are you okay with that? And are you aware that if it stays, it's going to retain its contamination? And that landowner said, yes, I am aware, go ahead and remove it. And as the archaeological monitors on that property, we documented the change in the site and we watched and observed the debris removal of that section, yeah. So there's always eyes, whether it's the archaeological monitor on the property and the cultural observer. There's two individuals looking out for the culturally important and highly sensitive areas on each and every one of your property. Yeah. I'll get to your question. So the archaeological treatment plan is the document that we all need to follow in order to ensure that what is protected or to ensure that the historical significance of the area is protected. And in order to do that, we need to define an area, of potential effect. So FEMA has determined that the area of potential effects for CDRP, Consolidated Debris Removal Program activities, will be limited to the boundary for which ground disturbing activities associated with debris removal will occur, right? So that's your ash footprint. In Kula, the parcels were quite large. The ash footprints were quite discrete on the parcel. In Lahaina, it's a little bit different. Our scope for survey was lot line to lot line. So the entirety of the parcel was surveyed. So again, what that means, all of these places, is the structural ash footprint is an area of potential effect for debris removal, access roads and staging, how the debris removal teams are accessing your parcels, where equipment is being staged in and around your parcels, as well as the maneuvering within the maneuverability areas within the parcels, right? So ash footprint, and then outside of that, the machines have to get around. So that's what we're looking at, yeah, and making sure that we're gonna try and cover that as detailed as possible. And then other activities incidental to debris removal operations. Like I said, room for equipment to maneuver. So what does that have to do with the ROE and the ROE site plan? There are 2 questions on the ROE that is specific to cultural resources, historic properties, and really anything that may be of significance to your ohana, and anything that might be generationally important to you. So are there any known cultural resources on the property? Yeah, not just archaeology, but anything that is contemporary and important to your ohana to maintain your the practices of your heritage. Right. So archaeological survey monitoring, we are looking for information, if you're willing to share, on old walls, old terraces, other types of similar structures. If you have significant or highly sensitive family burials in the area, and I understand that that's very, very, very sensitive. And so we'll go through how to, if you are willing to share that information, but a little bit, like, you don't want a whole bunch of people knowing about it. We'll go through that as well, how best to kind of let the teams know that there are those potential issues out there. For the cultural observers, ceremonial spaces, contemporary ku'ahu or contemporary altar type of sites, whether it's traditional Hawaiian. I'm not terribly familiar with other sort of religious practices, but those as well. If you have sacred spaces or ceremonial spaces within your home area that you are concerned about, or within your yard area that you're concerned about, please, please, please write it down, put it down in your ROE so that we can ensure that our cultural observers understand where those are, so that they know about it and we can guide the debris teams in these spaces. Contemporary lo'i or agricultural spaces, or other highly sensitive areas. One thing that came up in Kula and likely very much so here in Lahaina is that we understand that many cultures plant different types of trees for very specific reasons, right? And so if you have a tree like that, that is very important for your, as a resource for you, or because it's commemorating something or something is very below that, please, please, please indicate in your ROE that you have a very important tree to your ohana, and in the ROE sketches, jot that down. Yeah. The second question is, please describe any other details about the property. And this is where, the description of those culturally significant items, the description about those culturally significant places and spaces within your lot, will definitely help with the debris removal teams to understand where those spaces are. Know that as a part of the archaeological work that precedes the debris removal, we look at each and every single ROE. Read through I focus on these two questions right here. But we look at every single ROE and we look at every single ROE sketch to ensure that we have the best information to be able to feed our teams who are out there actually right now in Lahaina town, mapping the different areas that we have received permission to enter. And again, if you would like, and then going back to the notion of, we understand that these areas are highly sensitive, that you may be hesitant to share certain types of information just out there in the internets and the ethernets. So if you would like to speak directly to an archaeologist or a cultural observer about a highly sensitive area on your property, you can indicate that here. Or if there's someone else that is associated with the debris removal program that you are more comfortable with speaking directly to, who could then transfer that information in a sensitive way to those who need to know it, indicate that here. We just want to make sure to honor your sensibilities, but also honor your spaces and not to and avoid damage or impact to anything that may be very, very important to you, very, very significant to you. And then again, the property sketch is very, very important. Sketch out areas of archaeological concern, these boundary walls, terraces, anything that might be of concern to you. Underneath the house, we have a lot of post and pier residential homes here. And then if you do not want it to be removed as a part of debris removal, again, please indicate that on the ROE sketch. Okay. Mahalo.
You want to talk about? Sure. Okay.
I'm back. I just wanted to, this is kind of an example of a sketch of a TMK. And we just wanted to describe, and Tanya did a great job of describing what's eligible and not eligible under the program. So if you have a foundation, what you would see, if this was light enough, is a green dotted line. So the structural ash footprint is what's eligible under this event. So if the driveway is not impacted and the line goes right here, we will simply cut the driveway. The rest of the driveway will be left. Vehicles are eligible. 6 inches of soil in the ash footprint is eligible. Pools are not eligible. We'll drain the water and take out the debris, and we'll put a fence around it. Basements and wine cellars are eligible. Structural footings, as Tanya said, there's a lot of pier construction. Those are eligible down to the limit of excavation. But other what's called flat work, sidewalks, patios, things like that, unless they were impacted by the fire with structural ash, will be left in place. So we're trying to have a minimum impact to your property as possible. So again, the site sketch is vitally important for us to do it the way you would like us to do it. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview that we can, again, answer any questions that you might have. Is there? We got more? Yeah, that's an old slide. We're good.
Okay, mahalo nui kako. Mahalo to our speakers for getting us started. Hopefully some of that information has helped you answer some of the questions that you have. However, we're going to take a short break right now, just short, about 10 minutes. Give you guys an opportunity to go to the lua or start to formulate some questions because we're going to go enter into a period of question and answer following this break. There is vai or water here on this table. Please help yourself, and some cookies at the entrance door on that side. Just some light poo for all of you, and we'll get started right back here in about 10 minutes. Mahalo. question. This is a kind of larger audience. We have about an hour of time for questions and answers to occur before we have to start cleaning up the space and preparing it back. So when the kids come back to school on Tuesday. So I'm gonna ask all of you, if you have questions, if you can think through your question so that when I come around with the mic, you can say who you're directing the question to, or if you don't know who up here can answer that, you can just state your question. And then we'll have them answer it up here. If you have a question, if you can raise your hands, and I will move through the audience as I see your hands being raised. And if I can ask one of my dear friends, or two of my dear friends from the Army Corps, if you guys can help me out. If I'm on one side of the room, if you guys can just like, hey, over here, that I might not see it. I'm getting kind of, my glasses, I think I need another prescription. Yeah. So I'm gonna be your not Vanna White, your Vanna Brown today. And I'm gonna come around to your tables. And I see Uncle over here, I have a question, and I'll come right to your table next, okay?
Thank you very much. My name is Gilbert Pan, and this is a two-point question for the Corps of Engineers. On the debris removal, what will determine which sector to be done first? Will it be the business sector or the residential sector?
So, can you guys hear me? The Army Corps does not set that priority. The priority for where we start work was set by Maui County. And we're starting in work zones that are adjacent to properties where people are still living for public health. We're also starting near waterways or on the coast to protect the water resources. So those are the priority zones that we've been given. It is not by property type, but I can tell you that the first contract that we led was for residential properties.
So in that case, the second point is, will the residential sector be cleaned? Will it start from the Hawaiian Homes area to Olowalu, or Olowalu side to the Hawaiian Homes?
We're starting again with the priority zones. So if there's priority zones throughout, we will have crews in those zones, and we won't work from one end to the other. We will have multiple crews working throughout Lahaina.
Thank you.
I'll go take them first and then jump right back over here.
Hello, my name is Dickie Moon. I think it's kind of a procedural question for the Corps, and that is, if I understand it correctly, you're not going to clean the entire property. You're going to clean the halo, which means that there's other debris left, which the homeowner may have to clean up. Is that correct? Because will there be ash and so on that could be in I'll just say in a yard or in a back corridor that has to be cleaned?
Potentially. So if you have bushes or other vegetated debris, it's like any other
Right,
forest
just-
fire.
yes.
It's not eligible for FEMA funding to clean that up. What we have heard, and maybe this is a question for Aaron to answer, about the debris rider or deductible that you have can be used for that follow-on cleanup. So do you want to?
Yeah, so switching to the insurance side of it, once Army Corps comes in and does the work and cleans up the entire foundation, if there still remains debris or things you want cleaned up on your site, check with your insurance provider, but in most cases, that debris removal funding would be eligible for that. So you can use that first before the county asks for whatever remains of the debris removal funds.
Okay, that was part of my question next. So thank you for answering that. But then it seems to get into very complicated situation where you go, now you've got the Corps cleans up part of your yard, then you have to hire a contractor to come in, and trying to get that debris someplace else is very complicated. Can the homeowner contract with the cleanup company that's doing it to do that work simultaneously so it goes into the Olawale landfill and we don't have to wait 2 or 3 more months until there's a proper facility that's available.
The debris that we're leaving can go to Maui Central. So that's non-hazardous. The reason that we are leaving that debris is because it doesn't qualify, because it doesn't meet the criteria for the Olawale temporary debris site. So it can go to an existing landfill. There's no hazard associated with it. Oh, sorry, and can you use the same contractor? And the answer would be no. Under our authority from FEMA, that's specific for this debris removal that's eligible.
I guess my question would be an add-on to his question right here. And it would be, so say if I had I don't know, some kind of existing little building next to, not connected to the house, and I wanted, am I able to draw it onto the map so that you would know that that is something I would like removed as well?
All structural debris is eligible under the program regardless of the size of the structure. So we'll take every eligible structure, so the answer is yes.
Okay, and then on top of his question in regards to going from, you know, say Waihikulī to Lahaina, my question is, do you have a timeline to where you know maybe 2 weeks ahead that you're going to be doing this section or not, so that we as the homeowner are told 2 weeks in advance as opposed to 3 days, so that we know that this is kind of our final goodbye or time to go look for anything that we want?
So reentry should be complete by now. That process was conducted by MEMA. If you have not done your reentry process, I would recommend that you start that now and get a placard to go do that.
No, so like, for example, I already have gone back to my property and I know the debris cleanup is going to start, whether it starts tomorrow or in 3 days or in a couple weeks. If you knew ahead of time, if you were able to tell me in 2 weeks, we are going to be clearing out your property, then I know mentally in my head, I have 2 weeks to go back, look if I want to look for anything and say goodbye and that's it? Or are you just able to give me the 3-day notification so that I can go back only in 3 days?
Understood. So thank you for the clarification. The 3-day call ahead is to schedule your cleanup. Not that we will be there in 3 days and that's it. A lot of times we'll contact people and they're not even on island. So it's a coordination call, not a drop dead date.
Thank you.
Where? Oh, okay, you guys have a question? No, okay.
Thank you. Aloha, thank you for being here today. I am a representative for Emerald Plaza. It's a commercial property down off of Keawe Street by Island Grocery. And 3 of our 4 buildings were destroyed in the fire. Our buildings have been deemed unsafe for entry. But yet the street was opened up where most burn areas have been secured. Kupo'ohi Street is open, which led people going into our buildings and going through them, some scavenging, trying to steal electric wire, you name it. So no one's contacted me about that. So we ended up putting up the security fence on our own because none was done. I did the BMP in the parking lots because all our drains dump out into that big channel. So when it rains now, any debris in those buildings, which is substantial, goes in those parking lots. And I have those sealed off. But my question is, it's a light commercial building that was mostly contractors, which we will need to start the rebuilding of Lahaina. And now we have a property at risk that's unsafe. Island Grocery next door can't open its parking lot because our wall is leaning towards them. And the evaluation or how soon this should be done has been deferred. And I guess I understood that deferred means it will be done sooner than later because it's deemed unsafe. And right now, we're the only ones that are securing that property. So I needed an explanation about where that kind of puts us. And I don't think we fall under this umbrella of the main burn area. I don't think we have hazardous debris. It's a 20-year-old building. We don't have dirt. It's a paved parking lot. The buildings are all metal. All the utilities are underground. They're commercial foundations. The fire damage may have a mitigation plan or a repair strategy for the foundations instead of tearing them out, which I won't know until we get the site cleared. So as with many people, we are trying to get clarification on how that's going to proceed.
The deferred properties are, again, a little bit complicated because EPA couldn't go in and do household hazardous material or asbestos removal. Now, you've said it's a new build, so they may not have found any anyway. That being said, if we get a right of entry for the deferred parcels, the process will be, once we get the right of entry, we'll go out and install additional best management practices, and then we have to de-energize that structure. We're going to knock it down. We'll give you a call before we do that, and then we'll conduct the site assessment, the household hazardous materials removal or bulk asbestos removal, and that is very similar to the reentry process that occurred for those that weren't unsafe. So at that point, you'll have a reentry process. You can go onto the property, you can take a look at it and see if you want to continue. There's no requirement that if you give us a right of entry that you have to follow it all the way through. You can opt out at any time if it's in your best interest to do so.
Another real just quick question because it's related to the ROE.
You want to wait so that the folks can hear the question.
Because I did fill out a ROE. There's 21 units. Because I'm the president of the board, I sent in the right of entry. And the understanding is the buildings are owned by the HOA. The individual contents inside are by the owners. So I did all 21 units and I sent it in, and that's where it got a little confusing. I sent it in November. They're still calling me to have my wife sign documents or other things they need, but it's really two separate items. The buildings need to be tore down. That's a common element. And that's what I was authorized to sign. And after that, it would be the individual unit contents of ash. But no one's ever told me how that works now.
Again, I'll defer right of entry questions to Ms. Wade and or title base.
Okay, thank you. So I think Christine, who is actually here in the back, has been the one calling commercial property owners and commercial properties. So if there's something specific to the property and the HOA, frankly, every HOA has been different, and she's been like looking through their bylaws and making sure we're following all the legal procedures. So we probably need to look at your property specifically. But happy to do that after. And Christine's the one with the, can you raise your hand? There she is. That's Christine, who's been doing all condos and commercial properties. Okay, thank you.
I have a question regarding, I saw the map where the properties were blue, but what happens if your neighbor does not have a blue color and does not go through the disposal process? Because if you want to rebuild, doesn't that person's ashes come onto your property and still makes it danger to rebuild?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And we get that one quite often. For the federal program, as we've mentioned, we do have to have that right of entry in order to clean the material from that property. If the neighbor, or for those properties that do not submit a right of entry and are not participating in the federal program, the responsibility is on them to either use the alternate program, or really to use the alternate program from the county. Beyond that, in previous fire events where no right of entry was received for the federal program, no alternate program was established, then ultimately it would come back to the authority, the county, to determine for public health what has to be done about that property. It would be aside from the federal program, it would be aside from the alternate program, but that would ultimately go into, again, authorities coming to address the threat to public health. And that would be unique to each property, obviously. But I think what I believe is probably the heart of your question, that is going to be a concern for starting that rebuild, certainly. Because once the federal program, once we've completed our work, then the crews will finish that work on that property and we'll move on to the next property. Unless we receive a right of entry, then that will not be part of the federal program and that debris will remain.
So my question is on the ROE. It said somewhere, I was trying to look for it, but the day of we signing them is the day the things start counting on you guys' time limit for that liability form.
So the date that you sign it allows for authorization for essentially the archaeological to begin, because that's the very first step. So from the date of signing, that means work can begin. There's no time frame that's been determined, but typically, as FEMA would say, it's about an 18-month process that they typically fund, that they fund the development and that they'll fund operations. There's a chance it could be extended, but our goal would be to not need it, would be to get cleaned up before that. So that's about the extent. However, your individual ROE is only allowing for any of us to access your property through the end of your cleanup. So as in Kula, as soon as the properties are clean and the soil tests come back, they send me a closeout package so that I know the property has been cleaned to the standards of the Department of Health and it's ready to rebuild. As soon as they send that closeout package, they no longer have access to the lot anymore. So that's essentially the time frame that the ROE still stands and allows for access.
Mahala, just right now, I'd just like to let them know, the people who are online, there are questions that are coming in, and right after these two next speakers, I'll be coming to get your questions addressed.
Aloha. My question is, if we have trees growing on our property that were destroyed or badly damaged in the fire, will you remove those?
So part of what FEMA and the Corps of Engineers is authorized to remove are any what we call hazard trees. So those trees that are a hazard to the crews doing the work, or would be a hazard to rebuilding, or would be a hazard to a right of way, so a road. So part of the assessments that have been ongoing during the first phase for all of these properties is to arborists and others to go out and to look at those trees to determine which ones are of the size and in a position that they would create one of those hazards were they to die and to fall. And those trees have been marked. You can see them throughout Lahaina with, I think it's a blue circle and an orange tag in the middle. Those are the trees that the arborists determined met those criteria and would be removed. Trees that, again, that either, obviously, if it's going to live by their assessment, would not be removed. If it is, unfortunately, still going to die, but it is outside of those kind of danger zones for risk to safety, those trees would remain.
Okay, a couple unrelated questions. First, there was basically a firestorm for Lahaina. So you're going to come in and remove the ash that sits in the footprint of the structure and the foundations. And then you're going to test for toxicity in that area. And you're saying that the debris, ash and debris that falls outside of that is non-hazardous. So I can essentially wash my yard and just flush it into the ocean?
Sir, yeah, that's absolutely not what we're saying. The part of the assessment is to go to each property and determine that, we call it the ash halo. So it's not directly down necessarily from that particular house. The team goes out and assesses where did that ash move from that home or whatever the structure was, and that determines the halo of what will be removed. Clearly agreed, a lot of wind, tremendous wind, so again, that's why when they look at those and what is going to be removed, it's not, in most cases, going to be just the exact footprint of where your foundation was. But that's part of the assessment that is done to determine what will be removed. Anything outside of that, again, is determined to not be structural ash. And so then therefore that material, we would one, deem not hazardous, but also was not within our authority to remove that non-structural ash.
And second, totally unrelated, but concerning when this finishes and permitting for rebuilding our houses, if I were to put in a permit now, normally they have a timeline. If I put in a permit and I don't start building within a time frame, the permit becomes invalid. Is that still true?
Thanks for that question. So currently, the Public Works Department is setting up a permitting path specific for folks who are rebuilding as a result of the fire. You kind of have two options. You can submit now if you prefer, and you'll be in the existing system, or you can wait. Right now, we just received bids on a contractor to run that process. So it'll be outside of the normal county process. It'll be its own separate path for permitting. If you want to submit with that, there will be an expedited process as well as some different deadline criteria on the permit itself. So not all of that has been established yet. We're just in the process of bringing on that contractor to assist. But just something to know about the permits, you are eligible to submit your permit at any time. You're not eligible for the permit or you're eligible to submit your application for a permit at any time. You're not eligible to receive an issued permit until we get the closeout package that says the lot is clean. But as you all know, it takes time to review plans, et cetera. So that kind of buys you some time. So while we're doing our work on the cleanup, you can be doing your work on the planning side and begin submitting your application and materials going through the review process so that it's matching up as close as we can towards the end of cleanup, that you'll be primed and ready to rebuild.
Aloha. Question about this archaeological situation. You got through 14 houses in record time or whatever, and now you've got 3,000. How many people do you have working that can get this process done in my lifetime? I'm fortunate to be on a lot that isn't next to anything, but I did have building materials, wood, sitting on the back of it, and that's what burned up. I don't have a pad, I don't have a path, there's none of that stuff. And I'm too old to wait for 2 years to be where you come in and say, okay, we're gonna move 6 inches of sand, stuff off the lot, and then somebody's gonna stick dirt into a tube and say, oh, you're clean. I have to do that myself. And is there a way to guide us through a document that says how to satisfy you guys for me to then get in the permitting process. And again, with the permitting process, you say they're adding a contractor to help you guys do it, because I know that for more than, well, since COVID, you've been understaffed for planning everywhere, okay? And it's hard to understand that people won't go to work for you except that they're not getting paid enough money to do it. In most places, if you're not paying people, they obviously won't work. But you have the ability to raise the price of a permit so that you can pay them and people can get houses built. I was fortunate to talk to the mayor a couple of days ago, and he said, we're going to put everybody that was burned out in front of the line for permitting. Those are his words. Everybody else, sorry, these, that's first, which is a great thing. And he also said, we need housing. So if you can go to a piece of land and ask to put a small house on or something like that, do it. Don't ask, do it. I mean, those are his words, because it's true. I mean, we can't be in a hotel forever, and nobody can live that way. So I've opened up a lot of can of worms, but is there any answer to it? Because I just, I can't spend another 4 years trying to do something that anywhere else would take 6 months.
Mahalo. So I think there's two questions, one for the archaeological timeline and the work, and then also the other one for the permitting. Yeah.
So as a part of the archaeological treatment plan, there are 4 triggers for a cultural survey. One is if that structure was built in 1978 or before, then we have to go out and survey it. That's my main one that I look at. So that's like an automatic thing. 2, if there's something in the ROE that indicates that there is, and it's maybe a structure that was constructed after 1978, but they have historic properties there and they understand the importance of that. That also triggers the archaeological survey. And then there's 2 others for architecture. If none of those 4 triggers, none of those 4 bullet points get triggered, then we will not visit that property and we will say it does not meet the archaeological treatment plan requirements for surveying. So that kind of knocks some parcels. And if there's been an archaeological survey already and there have been no fines, right? So that's another one that we're tracking. And so that element sort of kind of put some parcels out. So not all 1,600 some odd parcels. We're not going to survey that. Right. And so just to be clear, the work that we are doing is in support of or preceding the government CDRP program. For the alternative program, I'm not sure what the timeline of that would be. This is a separate consultation process that laid out the requirements for archaeological survey. Yeah. In areas where we do trigger that, then we go out and we take a look, right? If it's a newer property and we have a bunch of different sort of resources available to us, like aerial photographs showing that maybe it was in sugarcane in 1960 and potentially into 1978 it was in sugarcane. And so this stone wall that we're looking at, we know does not meet our time frame. We can say, okay, we don't have to record that. We can move on. So our teams for archaeology in Hawaii, I think, are moving quite quickly through Lahaina. And the methods that we're using, I think, are really, really good for accuracy for those sites for those areas that we do have to record. And it's fairly quick, especially because We are limited only to the surface. Yeah, we are not doing any subsurface testing. That sometimes takes a long time, especially in Lahaina town, where we know what is just below our feet. There may be significant deposits as well as highly sensitive materials below the surface, yeah. And so that, where we have concerns for those types of potential sites being present below the surface, it goes directly to monitoring, yeah. And the monitoring occurs during debris removal. Is that helpful?
Thank you. For the permitting related to structures getting built, residential structures, whether they be temporary or an ohana, the Deputy Public Works Director is right now working on standards that are intended to be posted before the end of the month to allow for temporary structures to be located on existing lots outside of the burn zones, and as well as ohana structures to be built in areas where there's capacity. So like my lot, I still could build another ohana on my lot. And we're trying to expedite those to bring in some additional housing units to the community. I can restate the question.
Yeah,
So the
thank you.
question was, if you're in, what did it mean if you're in a burn zone? So we're not, the process does not work at this time for properties that have not received the cleanup. So until you've had the property cleaned up, we cannot permit any structure, temporary or otherwise. Once the cleanup occurs, you could be eligible for that expedited process. Okay.
Mahalo. I'm going to ask some questions that came in online, and then I'll jump back into the audience. First question, is it true all homes will have to dig septic tanks instead of connecting to city services?
Thank you. So if you had a cesspool, as the standard was prior to the fire, and you were applying for a permit, you have to upgrade to either septic or county sewer system. Wahikuli is being evaluated right now for community sewer, and we're trying to work with the EPA to see if there's an opportunity to bring that in. I don't have a timeline for that yet, so that's another stay tuned to the Maui Recovers website. It won't be fast though. I mean, that's a thing to like keep in mind in terms of your own personal timeline and making choices for your own family.
Mahalo. Another question, a common question that comes up, will USACE grade the property level following debris removal?
It depends on the property and the actual slope. If it's a flat surface, then it will be left at a flat surface with the backfill of either cinder or crushed gravel. Grading may occur prior to that, depending on if there's any safety issues associated with the site.
Mahalo. There's another question here, and I think it needs a little bit of clarification. It says, if debris removal is priority near intact neighborhoods, what is keeping one property as in progress, quote unquote, in progress, while neighboring lot is listed as complete? I think this has to do with signage, the different signage that's on the locations, and there's some confusion with those messages of complete and in progress.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the signage goes through the stepwise process. So in Lahaina, we have only completed the phase 1 activities. So the phase 2 really starts with a right of entry and then archaeological clearance. Once those two pieces are in place, we will start debris removal. Then we will put erosion control in place, and then we will finally close out the property. The last step, all of that's still in progress. The last step is county approval, which is when we return that right of entry with a closeout package. So that's when we're complete. So everything else will be in progress, including waiting for soil sample results to come back.
And I think just to more clarify this, that nothing has been complete in Lahaina yet.
To date, we've only completed right-of-way vehicle removal.
Perfect. Yes, so for all of you who have signage on there, there's one big sign that kind of pops out when you drive past, and that's the EPA signs that say complete. So that might be a little confusing because that was the first initial phase, and their signage has like a big bold green complete, and then it has a check, and then there's another sign on the bottom that has all the other checks. And to date, as Dr. Coker has said, none of the properties have been completed debris removal, just the vehicle debris removal.
And we actually haven't started debris removal
Yes.
in Lahaina, pending creation of the temporary debris site.
One question, and this might be a Aaron one. Will property owners be able to put in a tiny home after clearing?
Thank you. Yeah, so the priority for a temporary structure, that process is currently being established. So it is the intention to allow for that. And then whatever the long-term permitted structure is, you could have the tiny home while you're going through the permit process to rebuild a permanent structure.
This one, sorry, Dr. Koga, I think this is you. What date specifically will debris removal begin?
Specifically, debris removal is scheduled to start the 16th, so Tuesday of next week.
Awesome. If there is a county easement nearby our home that was impacted, will those areas be cleared up by USACE and not have a negative impact on our rebuild?
Thank you. So the mayor has authorized cleanup of all county properties and rights of way by the Army Corps of Engineers. The only caveat to share is, and this is for several historic structures, there's several historic structures that are county owned that are getting shoring. The shoring is being installed to keep, if there are standing walls, and preserve what is viable to be preserved. Those aren't going to be cleaned immediately. We're waiting for the shoring to be completed, but easements, rights of way, and other county properties are on the list for cleanup.
Okay, I have a question. There is a concrete block wall between my property and the neighbor, and during the fire, part of it collapsed. And will they knock the whole wall down and take it away? And also, there's like a whole bunch of debris, like the neighbor's metal roof is like in my yard. That I hope will be all taken away, correct?
Go ahead.
Any structural debris that's on property is eligible for debris removal. It'll be a case-by-case basis for those common walls because it's probably a shared wall. So we'll go through the process of saying, do you want it retained? If you don't, then we might have to get permission from both property owners to remove the wall. And thirdly, if it's outside the structural ash footprint, it would not typically be eligible for debris removal because it wasn't impacted by the hazardous substances.
But I mean, like, the metal roof from my neighbor is not my property, but it's outside the footprint of my current outbuilding.
So it might be eligible on his property, and then we would remove it. If it was impacted by his structural ash, we would remove it under that right of entry.
Okay, mahalo, mahalo.
How's it? Thank you for coming. Tanya, question is for you. You mentioned one of the triggers was if your house was built in 1978 or earlier. So a lot of the homes, to my knowledge, above the highway were built 78 or earlier, but not considered National Historic District. So being as where I was, a lot of friends, family, the Arizumi homes up in Waikuli, right next to where Hawaiian Homes is, the new one. A lot of those were built in the late 60s and 70s, I think. Probably a lot of them just 78 or earlier. So are those being a trigger? Are you guys gonna have to look at those properties still, even though those are normal residential?
Yeah. So we are looking, our survey area is the entirety of the fire affected area of Lahaina town. So we are not just focusing in the boundaries of the landmark. We are also looking outside of those boundaries. So we do know that the Wahikuli area was one of the earlier subdivisions to the north of the district, or on the Ka'anapali side of the district. And we have been serving in those areas. Some we have identified as we don't need to record here. There are some really interesting character defining walls that are the boundary walls in that Wahikuli area. So we have been documenting those if they meet our time threshold. And then for some of those parcels that might have, we call them isolated occurrences, because we know that even with the sugarcane in the areas, there's still things that come up in the fields, yeah. And so sometimes there are different objects that may have been curated on somebody's property. So we take a photo of that and move it outside of the debris field so that it can be retained for that homeowner, not necessarily knowing if they found it while they were building their hale, or if it's somewhere that was previously disturbed. Long story short, yes, we are looking at the Wahikuli area.
I'm coming.
Mahalo for coming. I have a question. What is the status of the water infrastructure? There are some areas that are not receiving, water is not being delivered, nor sewer.
Thank you. So I would love to have Chemo maybe come back next time, maybe with the next workshop. I'll see if some of our infrastructure team can come back. Essentially, they were working on, following gravity from above the highway down, testing the system. So they were needing to go in, laterals burned or melted throughout the district. And so water was leaking. So they capped everything. They kept everything they could. And then in section by section, after they would cap, they would run the water through, make sure it's holding, and then test. So that's the process that they've been doing. And they've just been working their way through the district, section by section. So we've been posting every time. And then also, if you haven't signed up on Maui Recovers for notifications, it will notify you as districts come online for potable water. So the other thing you want to also just stay cognizant of is, in some cases, like I know in the Kahoma area, there was water in the system, but it's because they were flushing it. So it doesn't necessarily, because there's water in the system, mean it's ready for drinking and bathing. You want to make sure you're always checking back on the Maui Recovers site. I think it says water and wastewater is the page. It has maps that show exactly what's live, what's green. Whatever's green is good to go, ready to drink and bathe. There will be a yellow category that says water has been activated, but you still can't utilize it yet. And then the red is we don't have any service yet. So, but they are completing not just their assessment, but their completion of the repairs to the system, section by section. The question was, is there a timeline? There was, and I can't remember what it is. So let me see if I can get it posted on the website, and I'll get back to you. Okay.
Hi, I've got two questions. Yeah, I live in Wahikuli right now, and it's connected to a cesspool, and I'm in the process of getting like a septic system done. So, can I get it done before you guys, the counties, the sewer system set up, or?
Thanks. So you cannot start until cleanup is done.
No, I understand that.
But yes, you can start prior to sewer. If you would prefer to go with your septic system, you can do that.
So later on, then, when the county does decide to putting the sewer system in, I'm going to have to hook up to the county system, and then that septic system is going to be outlawed or something, or?
So that part I don't know. Let me ask Shinagawa that question about what the expectation would be. If you do install septic and connect, do you have to then reroute later and connect to county sewer? That I don't know.
Yeah, because then I have another question is my mom's house in Waiakuli also survived and she has a cesspool. So what am I going to do with it like her?
So if the no permit is needed at the time, so the only trigger to require you to upgrade is the request for a permit. Okay, so if there's no permit being triggered in the standing structure, it can stay until the county sewer system comes through. But if there is a permit being triggered, you gotta upgrade prior to the permit getting issued.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Who are you guys giving me my exercise for the week?
Hi, this is for Aaron. You mentioned in terms of septic connecting to the county sewer system, for like commercial properties and say like the Willie Co subdivision that was completely destroyed, will they be required to upgrade to all the current building codes and particularly with regard to drainage runoff, which right now they just dump it into the street because all those properties had been built back in the 70s. And then the second question is, when you get the closeout package, what do owners get as indication or documentation that their property has been cleared and complies with state of Hawaii requirements?
So your first question was, when you rebuild, are you required to meet current building code standards? And the answer to that is yes. The drainage question, I'll need to follow up and ask Public Works about that one. Your second question is, what is included in the closeout package? Essentially, it's a cover letter that states that completion of the cleanup has been done and it's certified by the site engineer. Who else is on that? There's 3 signatures that say the standards for Department of Health, cleanup of soil standards as well. And then there's photographs of the site indicating the cleanup. Right now, we're looking to determine, and we're kind of in this internal conversation about the best place for that to live. Right now, because it was Kula, I was just individually sending them their packages, but we're trying to create an online repository for the owners to be able to go in and get them. It'll either be tied to the right of entry database so that you'll be able to see, because by the way, you can track your right of entry all the way through once you've created the record. So it'll either be tied to that or it will be tied to MAPS, which is the permitting system, because they need to be able to see that to know you're good to go to get the permit. Okay, thank you.
Mahalo. And right after this question, if anybody else who hasn't spoken yet wants to ask a question, then raise your hand and then we'll go back to the people who have already asked questions for like a second round. Yeah, so those of you who may have, okay, so we have one over there. First round people. Okay, and then we'll go second round.
Thank you. This is a question for archaeology. If monitoring is being done while a concrete foundation is being removed and EV is located, what is the process or delay that we can expect?
So if EV is identified below the foundation, then the process for consultation begins. It is hoping to be a quicker consultation, especially, and then the question becomes, if this kupuna stays here, does that then mean that the parcel is not cleared, right? And so those are questions that we're still trying to grapple with, yeah, because it's a very sensitive situation. But of course, all of the notifications go out and then that consultation process begins. More in line with the state rules and regulations, it would be considered an inadvertent fine at that point.
And the Army Corps is working with Department of Health to figure out how to sample and clear the property if possible. So there's other considerations, and those are going to be very site specific. So we'll do our best to work with Department of Health to get you to a cleared property.
And then Colonel or anybody up there have the clicker? Any of you guys who, okay, can we click back to the slide with the numbers, the Army Corps of Engineer helpline phone number? We had a question regarding what that number was going to be, and then, yeah.
I had a couple of questions, I guess. One is, well, should let people get the number. If the Halo,
Oh, it's in red on the bottom.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me send it out.
877-214-9117. And we have a call center that's open from.
It's open 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. on Monday through Saturday. It's open from 6 a.m. until 2 p.m., I believe. Things might be up there on Sundays. Yeah, so it's a recent change. We'll get that updated. Sorry about that.
I wanted to revisit that halo effect, the debris field or the toxicity field, whatever. Oh, okay. I have a lot of property owners adjoining me on two sides that have houses built fairly close to my property. If it falls within that area, would my property be tested for that area is one question.
It's a great question, and given the different lot sizes and the fact that we did have a high wind event, it may be fence line to fence line. And if a property owner's structural debris fell onto your property and you provided a right of entry, then we will complete that and sample that.
But it has to be something as discreet as that.
Correct.
Nothing airborne necessarily.
Correct. So
Okay.
again, airborne has been addressed by Department of Health upcountry. They've got a lot of programs that they're initiating to make sure that the public is aware of the potential risks. And I can tell you that the Department of Education has been sampling here at the school and at the intermediate school for wind-blown ash. And so far, they have negative results for metals.
Oh, okay. And the second thing is, and it may have been brought up when I was out of the room, but there's a considerable, at least I've heard in the Wahikuli area, there's been a considerable amount of vandalism. And if I have photos to show that when we did the, re-entry on the first day and we were assigned and we took photos of everything, and then I come back the middle of November to water a tea leaf plant that was planted there, and have this folded up piece of sheet metal atop of it that I couldn't lift off by myself, that was not even from our yard. And I hear this repeated in the hotels from other people on Fleming Road who have gone back, their houses are still standing. Stuff is taken out of the garage that wasn't locked. Gardening implements, hoses, everything. I mean, there's a lot of that going on, and this isn't necessarily the group to address it, but how does that factor in? Because it's adding Opala to my property that wasn't there to begin with. And it may very well impact the right of entry when trucks actually go in.
Sorry to hear that.
But it happens.
We did do a survey of the site to basically give a boundary of the work zone. So if
Right.
that material was placed on your property, that would be expanded
Okay,
to that work zone.
right, because I have photos with dates.
Yeah, and if, I would suggest talking with your insurance company about the stolen goods, if you can provide proof.
It wasn't stolen,
Do-
it was just placed, I said.
Oh,
a
but
plant was
some,
planted and
oh, okay,
back
sorry, I misunderstood.
Dumped on top of it, that was not from the yard.
Okay, thank you. So as many of you know, we had the National Guard that was providing security up until the end of December. And now there has been a switch, and there's a private security company, which I will pass along your comments and concerns to Amos, who runs the Maui Emergency Management Agency. He's the one who's facilitating that contract and can stipulate some more specific requests of the new contractor. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a question about permitting. Is there an advantage to getting your permit approved faster if there's no changes in what you had before?
Thank you. So I'm going to try to recall what Public Works Department said. So if your house was built since 2018, the building code has not changed much. And so they were saying if you had a recently permitted structure and you resubmitted for the exact same structure, that would be almost an immediate issuance. And they should have it on record if that was the case. If not, it will go through the normal process.
Before 2018?
Correct, since 2018, yeah.
Another question, just clarifying, like I've been hearing like a lot of the talks about the electrical poles being underground, like how it is at Hawaiian Home. Is that gonna happen?
I'm not privy to any of those conversations, but I'll put it on my list for things to follow up and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Mahalo. Any other hands back here? Questions? Okay. And then I'll come down to that.
My question is, when the debris is moved from, say, Waikuli, and you live in Hawaiian Homes, and the makani, the wind comes down, are we gonna be able, we have to move from Hawaiian Homes? That's a health issue?
So the Army Corps will do debris removal using wet methods. Basically, we mist or we wet the ash as we're doing debris removal. We also have air monitoring that's occurring immediately around and within the ash footprint. One is for our worker protection. The other is to show that those wet methods are working so no ash is getting off site. There was no requirement to move from Kula, and none of our ash monitors had any alarms go off. So we had people living immediately adjacent to debris removal, and they did not have to leave their homes.
Okay, thank you.
As I walked onto this end, I'm going to ask a question that was asked online. A homeowner received a call saying that their home would be is scheduled for debris removal. The house immediately adjacent to them, their ROE application still says online that it's in progress. Good thing I came to the water table. Okay, sorry. The question was, why would that house not be on the same timeline?
So if we have not received the right of entry permit, we obviously cannot begin any cleanup. So as the right of entries come in, they will be given to the Army Corps of Engineers once we have approved them. They will follow, and their contractor will follow what makes the best sense for the contractor moving through. The important thing I think to note about that is we've had several people call and ask, what if I might want to consider doing alternative debris and I need some time to understand what alternative debris cleanup looks like? What if the Army Corps starts and then moves past me and I'm kind of left behind and I haven't figured out which program I want to go in yet? What we have been suggesting to people as an option is to fill out your right of entry either way, because you can always withdraw. If you, up until the moment that the trucks start moving on your property, you can opt out of the program. So just to like cover your bases and make sure that you're not foreclosing any options for yourself, it's to your benefit and to the moving through of the neighborhood. We had 3 or 4 folks do that in Kula. They actually didn't believe that Army Corps would be able to get moving faster than they would. And so I told them, hey, listen, we've got this withdrawal form. You can fill out at any time up until trucks are there. So if it's your preference and you think you want to do alternative, look into it for yourself. But don't miss the opportunity to get the free cleanup and have it pass you by and have them move out to Lahaina and not be able to come back to you. So just keep that in mind and share with your friends and neighbors. That's always an option.
Hi. I had a question about vehicles on property. I have a vehicle on my property. It does not belong to me and it was completely destroyed. Is there like an itemized removal fee for this vehicle? Like, will it be levied against me per se? I may have a follow-up question depending on the answer.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the question, and I'll take a shot at it, and may have to get back to you more specifically. But I mean, if that vehicle is on your property, I mean, is the owner identified or is it unknown?
Yeah, it belonged to a renter.
Okay, so I mean, that vehicle would still need to go through the same adjudication process for title and insurance and all those things. If just as if it were your vehicle, once all those are complete and we have a right of entry for the property, then that vehicle becomes debris and will be removed as part of the right of entry for your property. And I'm looking at the guy who really knows and getting the nod.
And that adjudication process probably won't occur on property. So once we get a right of entry, we will take your vehicle or the vehicle that's on property to an adjudication yard. And the county will adjudicate or basically clear the vehicle identification number and then provide that to the vehicle owner.
Yeah. Well, we've gone through the same process with another vehicle that they've gone through such high heat that we can't find any identifying markings. I haven't looked at this particular vehicle, but another vehicle that we own, the VIN number is gone, plates are gone. There's like anything aluminum is melted. So if I'm not being charged for it, I'm not going to worry about it. But if something like, oh, I can't find my renter, she's gone in the wind. So like, well, if that's going to be fall on my footstep, years from now.
No, there won't be any charge for you to have that vehicle removed.
Okay.
Awesome. Anybody else on this side? I'm coming to you over there.
Thank you. I just had a question here. So on the process that you're starting the cleanup, how was that chosen and which part are you starting at, or so the people can have an awareness of possibly a cleanup, or how does that fall in a selection, or how are you selecting it and going on a timeline?
Again, the Army Corps is not, she has another question. So the Army Corps doesn't set the priority for where we start or how we're doing selection of properties. We were given a priority list by zone to protect human health. So in those properties that are immediately adjacent to the burn zone where people might still be living and or where water is being returned with sewer, those are priority zones. So we'll be doing those first as those rights of entry come in. The other priority is protection of water resources, so the coast and or streams. So those will be the first ones done, and then we will try to complete in a stepwise process as quickly as we can each of those zones. So that the process is to how we start was set by Maui County.
Let me ask a follow-up question because I can see that this question is coming up in slightly different ways. Is there possibly a website, a portal of information that people can go to see, okay, they're going to be working over here, not just any waterway, but this particular waterway or this this set of properties adjacent to existing homes? And if the answer is no, it's no, but is there something like that maybe?
The priority zones were provided, and we'll also have a website that will be running so that you can track progress of your particular parcel through the debris removal. And it will include the surrounding parcels as well.
Corey, is that at that website that's up there? Is it at Maui Recovers? Or is that going to be
No, we will have, well, actually, our viewer is on Maui Recovers.
So my question is, on the vehicle removal, if we have the right of entry, we were instructed by our insurance company that they would have to be the one to remove the vehicle. Are they allowed to just go in and remove it anytime, or what is the process?
Currently, because there's no alternate program, no debris removal is allowed unless it's done by the Army Corps under our program. That being said, the vehicle adjudication can occur at the vehicle lot by the insurance agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? We're right at about 5 o'clock. Or a little bit after 5, we're gonna start to wind down. I'm gonna go back to questions that are online. I have 2 people right now who have indicated that they want, yeah, right here and right here, yeah. Oh, no, oh. You was just looking at me, yeah.
So, my property, 3/4 of my fence was burnt down, but I still have posts sticking up. Would that be an option for removal?
Was the fence impacted by a structure?
No, just the fire burnt it off, 3/4 of it down, and there's just still posts. So it's up to the owners to take care of that process.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's ineligible because we do the structural ash.
Okay, thank you. And so when they do the foundation and they take the foundation out, but I still have sidewalks and the fence that's on top of me, and that's my responsibility after you guys get done with cleanup first.
Yeah, typically, unless that sidewalk was covered with ash and burned and is now a hazard, we will leave all the flat work, the patios and the sidewalks.
Well, the sidewalk was surrounding the house, so
If it's within that ash footprint, then it will come out with the foundation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Read some of the online ones. You want to read?
Okay, I think we answered a couple of these here. What is the status of water testing being done on the runoff from the current storm, as well as the testing being done on the fish? Are people eating contaminated fish, and how far does the contamination runoff extend?
I think it's the USGS that's doing the near coast water sampling, sediment sampling. FEMA is currently setting up a clearinghouse site for all of the environmental data that's been collected to date. I don't know if that's ready to go live there. I think they're trying to host that on the University of Hawaii website. But we don't have that information, so I think it would be best answered by FEMA because they are collecting all of the data currently.
Are they testing for asbestos at the schools?
I don't believe, no, so the testing that was done at the schools was white testing for metals.
We have hazardous walls that have prevented us from attempting to collect personal items. We understand the wall will be taken down and we will be given the time to sort and locate items. How long between the walls coming down and when debris is removed?
So the Army Corps is coordinating with MEMA on what that process looks like. So once we've determined that we have a right of entry and that we need to de-energize that wall for reentry, the Army Corps still needs to remove household hazardous materials and bulk asbestos prior to it being safe to enter. So it's kind of really hard to give an actual timeline, but as soon as we have the right of entry and start that process, MEMA should be reaching out to grant that reentry placard or permit.
What happens if my neighbor is deceased and no family member signs up? Will our home be delayed for removal?
So let me address the no living member component first. So we're currently working with the court system right now to identify a conservator that can act in an expedited way on behalf of those properties. That also applies in situations of a trust where the majority owner is deceased, because we do need majority ownership to sign off. So we're working with the court system for an expedited process for that right now with Judge Cahill. What was the last part of that?
Will our home be delayed for removal?
Okay, so because we still only have about 700 ROEs that have been approved so far, and we're trying to get to that 2,100 number, you know, there's going to be a while that the Army Corps is going to be working. So yes, delayed in the way that, yeah, it's not going to be one of the first 700 that's already been given to the Army Corps. But it will still be in the queue as long as we get it through the ROE process.
And just for clarification on that, the person asking, their ROE has been approved for clearance, they're concerned that theirs would be delayed.
Oh, okay, because of the neighbors. So no, if the Army Corps, and this happened in the Kula neighborhood too, the Army Corps will move through with their process as needed. I mean, one of the things to keep in mind too, there's properties they needed to bring in special equipment. So they might have done 3 on a given street, but couldn't get to the 4th because it was in a gulch and they needed to wait for the crane. So they kept moving on past that, but ultimately came back. So in those situations, it might not necessarily flow one property to the next. They might need to, for strategic reasons, jump around.
You want to address the bill that for condemnation if you never get a right of entry? So the bill that was passed to allow for the alternate program, so if you wanted to do the cleanup on your own, also included expedited language. So if you never get a right of entry, the county can condemn that property, allow the Army Corps to go on and clean it up without a right of entry from the owner. The owner can never be identified. So it's what's called a nuisance property. So those may take a while to get to, but it won't stop debris removal in any neighborhood.
Thank you, Beth. For businesses that survived in the center of town, will the new security be regularly checking those areas? The National Guard was here near our shop.
Okay, I will have to follow up on that with Amos. Thank you.
Will debris removal be 24 hours or just daytime?
Our current hours of operation will be daylight hours. When we have a full 12-hour daylight period, we will be working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
How can I find if my ROE has been approved?
Thank you. So you can go to the portal that we showed on the website. So if you go to the MauiRecovers.org page, and where it says sign up or check an existing right of entry, click on the check on existing right of entry. You will have probably created a username and a password to get in. You'll go in and check your portal. It'll say what's happening. It'll say if it's had an initial review, if additional documents are needed, if it's going through final review, or if it's been turned over to the county. So you should be able, and then finally if it's been approved. All of those things will come through. In some cases, and just to share, there have been a couple that got submitted and got denied, and it was for the very reason Colonel Curry and Dr. Koger have said. They applied but didn't have any eligible debris. So in those cases, we send a denial. And then we'll also send you a fact sheet that says, we realize you still might have had impacts to the fire. You may have siding that melted. You may have a refrigerator that created a big mess in your house and now you got to get rid of it. So we'll send a fact sheet that explains what you can do with all of those items and how to come get those taken away as well.
And what neighborhood is debris removal starting on Tuesday?
I have an address in my head. I'm not sure about the neighborhood. It's in Waikuli.
Thank you. Okay.
So I think you guys brought up an alternative debris removal. That's not that's not a program yet, but you guys are working on it? Is that right?
No problem. So, yeah, the Public Works Department is responsible for creating the standards for the alternative debris removal program. We have the program, honestly, 95% written. We still are looking for a location for debris to be taken if it's not part of the Army Corps program. So that has been the holdup, one of the primary holdups for issuing the procedures for alternative debris removal. Now that we've checked the box of identifying the TDS to get most folks who are going to go with the government-sponsored program moving, the focus is going to be on the alternative program.
Okay, the reason I was asking because I'm coming to some roadblocks as far as getting my ROE complete. So I'm just wondering, my next step would be an alternative program. So is there like going to be a different companies that you were going to be able to go to and ask about, their program or?
Great question. So, I mean, because given each situation is different, you might need to have a series of companies to be performing the work. If you're running into trouble with your ROEs, let's talk, because we certainly want to be able to work with you to accommodate and make it work for your property.
Okay, great. And then one more question, sorry. For the final location of the debris, I guess right now it's in Olowalu. Where is the final place that you guys are thinking of putting the debris?
The county had kind of put all its eggs in the basket of Oluwalo previously. So right now they're kind of back to the drawing board of looking at alternative locations for final disposition. Certainly the Central Maui landfill is being evaluated. The concern is traffic. We already have concerns about traffic on the highway and on the Pali and wanting to not exacerbate that if possible. So yeah, that is Shinagawa with the Department of Environmental Management. And I'm sure he's going to be doing some additional meetings to share with the community what they're evaluating.
Okay, well, thanks.
Anyone else in here? Oh, yep. Okay, and we have a couple online, but we'll go right here first.
Hi, one more time. I need you to please repeat the process of the debris cleanup and the people concerned about cleaning now and then getting contaminated again once the debris cleanup has started. It's a lot of people are concerned, the ones that have homes and they can be cleaning up now, but they don't want to clean up and use their insurance money because it's only being allotted one time. And they're kind of being told that they need to go back to their homes because they're deemed in the clear zone right now and it's safe to live. And so again, can you please repeat the process that you are going to be doing and how people upcountry have been able to live next door to when there was debris removal being done?
Yes, absolutely. And thanks for the question. So again, as we start the process on those particular properties, again, the contractor will first put in place all the best management practices. So everything to control runoff, to control anything from coming off that property on the ground. And then they'll also put up air monitors, and there will be air monitors on all the individuals working for their safety. There will be air monitors immediately around that property. And then there will also be air monitors placed according to where the wind is blowing on that particular day to monitor the air throughout the process. They'll start with the recyclable materials, the recyclable metal, recyclable concrete, and that will be removed. Again, while all those air monitors and other best management practices are ensuring that nothing is coming off of that property and getting anywhere near adjacent homeowners' properties. Once they complete the recyclable material, then that's when they will go in and begin to remove the ash through the burrito. With the burrito process we mentioned earlier, a lined truck, ash and contaminated soil will go into that lined truck. It'll be sealed and transported away. So that truck's not going to move until that burrito, that plastic is closed and sealed. So it cannot come out of the truck as it's just to say driving down the driveway or out on the road en route to the temporary debris storage site. Once they've removed the ash and the contaminated soil from around the foundation, they'll remove the foundation, and all the same methods will continue for not only air monitoring and ensuring that the other best management practices remain in place, but also for the burrito wrap process. Once that is complete, they'll do a 6-inch scrape of the soil underneath the foundation, and that will, again, all the same processes that will go off the property, and then they will go in and test. Those tests will be sent away. Right now, they're taking about 10 days. We're working on a way to expedite that, so that can be shorter. But again, that is complete. That will, if that test comes back as it's clean, it meets the Department of Health standards to rebuild, then no more material will be removed. And at that point, we will backfill with 3 inches of cinder or crushed gravel. But I think the key point, and to the heart of your question, all the contaminated material at that point will be removed. What I would add, throughout that process, those air monitors, I mean, the daily weather, the winds blowing, ultimately they will, if one of those monitors triggers a reading, everything stops and they determine what's going on, why is it, and sometimes we had some situations in Kula where we don't think it was one of our monitors, but some of the Department of Health monitors came back with a reading, and everything stopped, but ultimately it was somebody was mowing their grass or smoking the meat for dinner, and that's what triggered those things. But the key point is that for those adjacent properties, everything will stop before that. If something happens it's not supposed to, before that ash or contamination can get outside of that circle. And so again, every conceivable precautions put in place to make sure that doesn't happen. And Corey.
And we also have we follow the Maui County guidelines for hauling. So once the wind reaches a certain speed, we have to suspend operations just so we don't have ash and debris flying around. And just so you understand, the number that we're trying to get to for on-property completion is the residential standard, which means 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 70 years. That is the standard so it's a lifetime. And so it's a very stringent standard, but that's for your protection and to allow you to build again.
Can you repeat how you're going to wet the ash?
Each property will have a water buffalo or a water truck. So anytime anybody's in the property, wet methods we're just basically spraying. So that knocks down that ash, and that's the engineering control that we have so that if the dust monitors go up, we either say we have to put more water, or we have to lower the height of the drop from the truck, or we have to slow down.
All right. If my neighbor has debris removal in progress, will I be able to go into my property and sift for valuables?
To my understanding, reentry is complete unless there's a safety issue, and that our right of entry does not preclude a property owner from going on their own property. So the short answer sounds like yes. But if we're doing debris removal immediately adjacent to that property, it's probably not advisable to be in that work zone just because there's going to be heavy equipment.
Will fire insurance go to FEMA?
Debris removal insurance would go to FEMA. So fire insurance covers the structure. Some insurance has a deductible associated with debris removal. So speak with the insurance provider to find out if you do have a deductible. Sometimes it's an actual number, like $10,000. Other times it's a percentage of the cost of the debris removal. And so the insurance commission is at the DRC still? No. So just reach out to your insurance provider to find out what your debris removal requirements are.
Approximately how long will it take for all debris removal to be complete in Lahaina?
For residential debris, it will probably be about a year. For commercial and public that might need shoring, that's going to take a bit longer. So we're estimating a year and a half for all debris.
What is the safety plan for keiki in schools when debris removal starts? Will the schools be closed to protect keiki and staff from ash drift that can contain heavy metals and asbestos?
So the same safety standards for nearby residents are the same for the schools. So the dust and air monitors will continue, and Department of Education, will also continue their air monitoring as well as wipe tests.
Awesome. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay.
Mahalo, and mahalo, hi Aaron, Zeke, and Tanya, and U.S. Army Corps, Ellie Cochran. And so first off, where did the debris from Kula go?
It's a great question. Debris from Kula was taken to Maui Central Landfill.
Okay, and as far as I was told, I had spoken to Chair Lee the other day. I'm told that there is a property next to at Central Maui Landfill owned by a single person they're starting to negotiate with to purchase. So my thought is, you know, the temporary spot in Olawala, which has been controversial and all that stuff. I mean, I feel like if we could shoot for a one-stop final destination, because as I understand, the temporary site, you know, destination is covered by FEMA, but the second removal will not be. Is that true?
To answer the first question, it's always best to have one haul. We don't have to handle that material twice. So if a permanent debris site is created, instead of going to the TDS, the temporary debris site, it will be directly hauled to that final destination, whether that's Central Maui or another location. FEMA is also paying for the final transport from the temporary debris site to the final site.
Okay.
So the only thing FEMA doesn't pay for is construction of that landfill, because that's a county responsibility, the final landfill.
Right. Okay. I mean, I'm looking at wear and tear on our roads and just the inconvenience to community. I mean, that's just my thought. And having discussed with other people in community too, we have to live through it, you know, double. And if we could just, you know, do it once, but that's the powers that be that have to decide that at the end of the day. And I just wanted to answer someone's question about undergrounding existing villages of Leali'i wiring. And I had Everett Dowling respond to me just now and said, the existing, no, but the second phase, yes, for that. And DCCA, Department of Commerce and Consumer Agency, that was at DRC at Lahaina Civic Center, the insurance commission that can help you with your insurance information, just go to that site or call the DCCA department and they'll help you with your insurance questions. So those are just comments and questions, and thank you for your answers.
Thank you.
Oh,
Mahalo. How's everybody? Any other question? Oh, okay. Gotta watch any slight move you guys make. I think you guys calling me. Anything else? The speakers will be here right after we finish today. I wanted to inform everyone. The 27th, yeah. So on January 27th, so next week, on January 20th, there's a large event that's happening throughout Lahaina. So we will be back here on January 27th on that Saturday, same time. Same cast and crew over here. If you guys go back and you think of more questions that you guys have, please come back. We can meet in person here. The Lahaina Wednesday meetings are still occurring, and that will still happen down at the Civic Center here. And before you leave, if you still, again, want to check your ROE status, have questions about your application and or want to sign up, there's two tables here that are here to help you. to give you back your day and respect everyone's time. Mahalo nui a kako apo. Please return safely to your homes and your families. Aloha ahuiho.